Hi, thanks for joining me for this 30-minute yoga class. I'm Andrea, and today we're going to focus on our spine feeling fine. I'm barefoot, which would be great. You're welcome to wear shoes. I'm here on my yoga mat. If you've got a yoga mat, that's great. If you don't worry about it. A carpeted floor will be just fine. Just not anywhere that's slippery. You also might want something, like I've got a bolster, but you can use a cushion from your couch, something to sit on and something for padding should you need it. It's always great to have a chair nearby for balance, although we're going to stay pretty close to the ground today. And some water for hydration is never a bad idea either. We're going to get started lying on our back. I just want to make sure that you love me straight out of the gate. So lying down is a good start, huh? Feet hip distance to start, just to ease your way onto your back. Once you've arrived, step your feet a little bit wider than hip distance, just a little. Let the knees fall in on each other for a moment. Let the shoulder blades shimmy down your back so you can ease yourself side to side until you feel the shoulder blades flat on the ground, and then place your left hand on your heart and your right hand on your belly. If you're comfortable, close your eyes and bring your full awareness to the rise and fall of your breath that you're feeling underneath your hands. We breathe all the time, or we wouldn't be here. But often with very little consciousness around our breath, so become very aware of rich, deep, full inhales that you feel underneath your hands right now. And then complete grounding exhales. And let that be enough just for this moment. As we get a little bit older, we stop breathing to our capacity, but not us. We're finding that deep, grounding, oxygenating breath here. Now bring your arms alongside your body, palms to the sky. Maybe once again, feel the shoulder blades flat onto your mat. Notice that your head is heavy into the ground and that the very tops of your shoulders feel like they're falling into your mat. We're going to play a little bit with the lower back. So very gently start to press your butt into the ground and make an arch, lifting the lower back off your mat. And then do the opposite. So gently press your lower back into your mat. Just go back and forth. Let it happen not in the shoulders. Those are still shoulders on your mat. But right there in the hinge of the hip, that's called the pelvis. We want to make sure that we can still maintain the movement in our pelvis, that we don't get what's called frozen pelvis. So you're just moving gently back and forth and making sure that that hinge at the hip is still working, like a little WD-40 for the hinge at the hip. It's also going to let us know we don't want, when we're standing upright, to have too much of the rounding, nor do we want to have too much of the arching. So pause now and find the middle ground where there's a little bit of space in the lower back, but not a big arch. Still, you have the very tops of your shoulders melting down towards the ground, and you might feel a little tightness in the chest. That's normal. And just take this in. Just feel your spine against the ground. I love being against the ground because the feedback is so clear about what it is that we're creating here. Let this become a part of your fabric. So when I talk about your spine, we've had this experience, and it's not just a bunch of ideas. It's actually something that we've done together. Last couple moments just taking in a little inventory in our spine here. And then carefully roll to your side and bring yourself onto all fours. And once you're on all fours, situate your wrists right underneath your shoulders. Feel that the shoulder blades are on your back, just like we found against the ground, even though we're now off of the ground. Low belly lifts because we're facing the ground and we don't want to have that too much of an arch that we just felt against the ground. It might feel better to some of us to curl the toes under, which you're welcome to do, or even to pad your knees with a folded blanket or the cushion or bolster that you might have. We're going to isolate like we just did into the pelvis, so we're not going to be doing this with our upper back or our neck. And you'll just ever so gently arch into the back, right there at the pelvis, ever so carefully round, just like we felt against the ground, but now we're off the ground. Arching, still a lift of the low belly. It's only there at the pelvis, the hinge of the hips, and then rounding. And every now and then you might want to check in with the shoulders on your back. So we're not collapsed, we're not pushing so hard that we're rounding there. There's no compensation in the upper body. We're just making sure that we're in working order here in the pelvis. And then come to a neutral spine. Remember we did that just a moment ago against the ground. So it's not the extreme of the arch or the tuck. And then remember what this feels like, parallel to the ground. A moment in child's pose. Uncurl the toes, let your knees go a little bit wider, and sit back, hips towards the heels. And not for all of us does this feel particularly comfortable, so you can always come a little bit forward. If you have a big book or a block, you could put your forehead on your block. It might even be that you use your cushion and that you bring that cushion to sit and to assist that way in your child's pose. Take a couple moments where you are. We'll come through all fours once again. Feel the shoulder blades on your back and the low belly lift. Curl your toes under once again and then just come kneeling. And see if we can wear upright what we found lying down and then on our hands and knees. Turn your palms away from each other, thumbs rolling out. Let that happen at the shoulder joint. And then notice if your tendency is to arch your back like we felt against the ground a moment ago, or to tuck. And instead, imagine that you're lying down with your head against the ground, and line up ears, shoulders, hips, and knees. A little uplift of the low belly as we stand tall here. You might even notice a little bit of side to side favoritism, little habits that we discover when we pay attention. And let everything be straight down the middle and your chin parallel to the ground. It might almost feel like you're trying to make a double chin as you lean your head back. Technology has us in this chin forward position, and we want to try to combat that as we stand. Hands onto your hips. Step your right foot forward, and it might take a little adjusting. Keep your hands on your hips. Grow tall. Once you're situated, arms along your side like we've been doing. Spin the palms away from each other. Smile your collarbones and feel your low belly lift. So here as well, we're not collapsing into an arch. We're not tucking into a rounding. We're finding a tall stance. Stamp into that right heel quite a bit. The other thing that you want to avoid, and I'll turn and face you so that you can see it, is that we're not letting that hip fall out to the side. So the right hip's not falling out to the side as we stand tall in what might be called a warrior pose, just like we're warriors out in the world, peaceful warriors, no doubt. Now keep this beautiful, long awareness in your spine, thumbs to the sky, float the arms out to the side, and then a V shape overhead. It gets tricky with the V shape overhead. Think about leaning the head back. Maybe that double chin cue was helpful. And then stay with it and breathe into a new shape. We change shape on our mat because life changes shape, and we want to stand tall as we wander out into it. Keep breathing, 3 breaths here. Take your hands onto that right thigh. Now remember the hinge at the hip. Just start to hinge a little and a little and a little. We're not rounding, so we want to be careful of that. And you can move the leg in the direction of being straight, but as we fold, we're using that pelvic tilt, right? So we're making sure that it's a hinge at the hip. Now, it can stay here the whole time. You just want to make sure you're not pushing on your leg and hyperextending or overly straightening that leg. So a little micro bend in the knee is a good idea. If you've got 2 big books, or if you have a couple of blocks, you can take your hands onto your blocks. All I ask is that this stay long through the spine, almost as if we were still on our hands and knees, that feeling of things. So if you notice that you're beginning to round, you'll want to back things off and either take your blocks taller or take your hand up your thigh a little further. And then there are sensations in the back of your right leg that you breathe into. A little stretch here. A couple more moments. Think right hip gently drawing back and left hip gently drawing forward as we're here. Still fine in the spine. Now rebend the front knee. Take your hands onto the thigh if they've gone elsewhere. And then, ready? We're going to swoop. Right knee next to left knee. And then we'll come to our child's pose. So if those props that I recommended earlier were helpful, you can have your bolster or your cushion between your hips and your heels, maybe a block under your forehead, and then just pause for a moment. Come back to the breath. Upright onto hands and knees we go. Curl the toes under. You might pause on hands and knees to find the uplift of the belly, and then we translate to stand tall, turn the palms away from each other. Feel like you grew an inch taller than last time we were here. Smile the collarbones, and if another smile appears, that's never a bad thing either. Notice side to side that there's an evenness, and breathe. And then hands onto hips. Step the left foot forward and make your way into your lunge. And it probably takes a little adjusting. Remember, we're not swinging the hip out to the side. Outer hips hug in. And then once you feel that you're steady in your lunge and your low belly is lifted, arms along your side, turn the palms away from each other and find our tall stance. I don't know about you, but I'm excited about wearing this tall stance out into the world. A couple moments as we are here. And then thumbs to the sky, arms float out and up into a V shape. And we want to keep leaning the head back, keep finding that nice neutral spine. So we're not collapsed into an arch, we're not rounding, and And we're not jutting our chin forward as if we were still on our cell phone. Chin parallel to the ground, grow tall. I always need the reminder of an uplift of the low belly. Your gaze is straight out in front of you. Pause for 3 breaths here. And then bring your hands on top of that left thigh, hinging at the hip, so not rounding, hinging at the hip. We start to fold a little and a little and a little, and you'll reach a point where you're going to start rounding, and I don't want you to do that. So pause before you get there. Maybe you assemble a couple of blocks. It could be that you scooch the left foot forward a little bit to find that space. And then lengthen your heart forward. Hinge at that pelvic hinge. And appreciate breathing in any stickiness in the back of your left leg. But we're still standing tall as warriors, even as the shapes of things change. One side of your body might feel really different from the other side, so you can note that too. See if habits like shoulders creeping into your ears or chin jutting forward have snuck back into your shape here. And with love, just untangle them. Pause here. Last few moments. Now rebend that front knee. Bring your hands onto your thigh. And then here we go. Step left knee next to right knee. Move your blocks if you use them. Give yourself a little bit of space here. Come to seated. So just swing your legs around carefully. And then this is where I find the bolster or your pillow is really helpful. I'm going to sit on the edge of my bolster with a little bit of space behind me for my hands. So sitting up on the bolster, bottoms of the feet together. Just be careful that your knees don't feel this too much. We're going to try to find that beautiful long spine here. I find that if I can reach back and hold on to my bolster a little bit, it gives me the uplift without a collapse. Low belly is lifting. Let your gaze be at one point. There's nothing wrong with staying in this powerful upright position the whole time. Some people enjoy hinging at the hip and taking a forward fold. And I like to use my blocks if I'm going to do that so that I don't resort to rounding. I stay long in the spine. It doesn't have to go very far to feel like quite a lot. We're breathing into a new shape. And each shape is really just a little mini meditation. Our hips can get tight when we sit in one direction. And with our knees out to the side here, we're setting our hips free a little bit. That's good news for our spine as well. Our hips and our spine definitely connected. Hang in there. I know I've been quiet and it's just you and your breath and a little bit of music. But see if you can allow for that stretch too. All of us get a little restless. maybe a little impatient even. And that's part of the yoga. Just challenging ourselves to be instead of constantly do. Last few moments here. See if you can truly be here and not already trying to figure out what the next thing might be. Now, if you've walked it out and your hands are on blocks, start to walk yourself back. Join our friends who maybe still have their hands behind and find our tall spine. And then gently bring your knees together and extend the legs out in front of you. You might stay seated on your bolster or folded blanket. Just make sure that you're not locking out the legs, so that little bit of bend in the knees that we found in our forward fold a moment ago is now happening with both legs at the same time. This one's a tricky one. This one can really have you looking like Dracula if you're not careful. So you could situate your blocks or your tall books or your thick books on either side and really just sit upright as you allow the hamstrings and the backs of the legs to open up. With tight hamstrings, there's quite a tendency for the rounding of the back that we want to stay away from. So put a little bend in your knees, maybe quite a bit of bend, so that we can really sport the spine, hinge at the hips, and just a little bit of sensation in the backs of the legs is all it takes. Curl those toes back towards you. Remember when we were lying on the ground and the very tops of your shoulders were leaning against the ground, and I talked about the feedback that you get from lying down, and bring that into the mix here. If you untangle a little bit of the tightness and you want to challenge yourself a little bit further, that's fine, but we're not really going for more than we will benefit from any time when we show up on our mat. Manageable bits, consistently over time, that's where it's at. And just notice if that impatience or restlessness is tapping you on the shoulder here. Totally normal, happens to me too. And instead of indulging that feeling of restlessness, can you climb into your breath and get really fascinated by the oxygenating inhale and the calming and grounding exhale. Just a couple more moments where we are right now. If you used your blocks or your books, start to walk yourself back in. Bend your knees and place your feet on the ground for a moment. Just let that ease for a moment. Come off of whatever it is you might have been seated on for your stretch. Shift it off to the side so that we have a little bit of room to lie back down again. And then as we lie down, once more find shoulder blades on the ground. We'll take this into a gentle twist on the ground here. I like to cactus my arms out to the side and then pick up, scoot your hips to the right a bit and just let your knees gently spill to the left. We don't want any electrical or sharp pain, so if you need to back off or come out of it, you're welcome to do either of those anytime. It's actually very advanced yoga to know when to back off or when to even skip things. Just make sure that this feels fine in your spine. We take a few moments to breathe into these sticky bits. Terrific for our lower back to gently release. And then come through center. Gently pick up your hips. Scoot your hips to the left now. And let the knees spill over to the right. You want to ease into it. We were just going a 180 in the other direction. So give this time to release. No force. While we're here, maybe there is something a little tangled up and tight in your jaw that you can let go of, around the eyes and the mouth. Think of your exhales as erasers, erasing that tension that you bump up against. Bring yourself back to center. Step your feet as wide as your mat and let your knees knock in on each other. Bring your arms alongside your body, palms face up. Shimmy the shoulder blades underneath like we first started. You might carefully pick your hips up just an inch straight up and then place your hips back down with a little bit more space and either stay like this or extend one leg and then the other into our Shavasana final meditation. Feet flop open and we feel our fine spine against the earth. Close your eyes if you're comfortable with it. Cover your eyes maybe. Total surrender. Welcome to stay here in this Shavasana final meditation as long as you'd like. If you're ready to start to find your way back, move your fingers and toes. Maybe even stretch your arms gently in a V shape overhead. And then gather your knees into your chest, roll to either side. And bring yourself up to a comfortable way to sit. Maybe it's cross-legged, maybe it's even on your cushion or bolster. And then with your palms up or down, close your eyes, sit tall, and promise yourself that you will wear this fine spine into all the different areas of your life. smiling your collarbones and smiling as you go. Thank you so much for practicing with me. I'm Andrea, and I look forward to us practicing again together soon.